Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coach Pedari's podcast here in partnership with Ivy Coaches. And I'm so pleased and delighted today to have an amazing and a very qualified coach with me. Amy Caroll, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Sahil.
Thank you. And obviously, as an expert of matter in the interpersonal communication, we're really pleased to be able to talk to you today and understand more about your practice and also your field. So without any further ado, what got you in interpersonal communication?
It started at the early age of 6.
Well,
at least, how they say you can't really, so many kids don't remember much before the age of 6. So I was one of those kids. Maybe it started earlier though. Sahil, I was literally picking fights at least starting at the age of 6. And I did it for a long time. I got away with it. I had lots of brothers and sisters, so I had lots of people to have my battles with. Well, fast forward, I'm 15 years old. I start my first part-time job, and I have a jerk for a boss. So I call up my older sister, Pat. I said, Pat, you're not going to believe it. I've got this idiot boss. She said, oh, that's really bad luck. Fast forward 2 years later, another job. Pat, I've got another difficult boss. She's like, oh, honey, that's really terrible. So let's just fast forward another 7 or 8 jobs. So, and finally, I'm in my early 20s. I call my sister, Pat. I said, Pat, you're not going to believe it. She said, let me guess. A difficult boss, Amy? I was like, yes. She said, honey, nobody has this kind of bad luck. So it was in that moment, Sahil, that I had my aha moment, like, oh, I'm the common denominator here of all these past problems. So it was in that moment that I realized, oh, if I'm bringing part of the conflict here, causing part of this problem, then maybe there's something I can do about it. I had no clue what or how, though what I did have was my motivation to figure it out. So that was the beginning of my path.
Wow. And I can tell you, I can tell you 99.9%, I'm sure a lot of viewers and listeners can resonate with the fact that once or twice in their lifetime, they've come across people who have not been easy to work with. Now, interpersonal communication is just not your daily use of the word communication. There's more to it to succeed, I assume. Can you kind of open up that window towards what successful interpersonal communication looks like, or at least should look like, if someone is curious to understand better?
Well, as I was listening to you ask the question, the first word that came to me was respect. And not just, so it's, communicating with people, whether it's virtual, over the phone, face-to-face, in an email, text, any form of communication. Is it both ways? Am I showing respect to the other? Are they showing respect to me? So it's not just about, oh, I have to show respect to the other person. It's got to go both ways. And we have power to influence that. So that same sister that I mentioned earlier, because I come from a big Irish Catholic family. So I've got 3 brothers, I've got 3 sisters. So Pat was on her own path of discovery. And many years ago, probably 35, 40 years ago now, easily, she was already working on this. And over the years, she developed this communication model called predator, prey, or partner. So I'll give you a quick intro. The predator. So here, the predator is a person who's not afraid of conflict. Is that clear? And you're like, whoa. So you can see, I'm like, and I'm like, what? See here, what's the problem? I'm just communicating. I'm just telling you something. And you're thinking, this woman's got to chill out. Someone give her some chocolate. So I've damaged the relationship because I'm holding too much respect for myself, not enough for you. So you're either feeling intimidated or ticked off, or both. Yep. And I've got to do a lot of work to clean up that relationship. The contrast, the prey, and that's spelled P-R-E-Y, although they're often P-R-A-Y, because they're really nice people. So Sunil, I mean, what I'm saying is, well, if there, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Sunil. It's just that there's something I need. I'm so sorry. I got to tell you something. So I'm
Yeah.
doing all these things that are sabotaging my credibility. And that, when I don't hold enough respect for myself and I'm holding too much respect for the other, that can actually trigger even someone like you who's nice, kind, and respectful. Okay, I'm making some assumptions, so I think those are accurate. That could even trigger you to become a predator towards me.
Of course. Yeah.
So I have a huge amount of power to shift this dynamic. The idea is, most of the time, most of us are behaving as partners, meaning I'm holding high respect for myself, high respect for you, all as well. The problem, under pressure, stress, perceived threat, crisis, COVID, or just if we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, that's 9 categories already. And if there's no chocolate in the house, 10. That any of those circumstances could trigger many of us to either go predator or prey. And so the idea is step in partner before you need it, stay in partner when the going gets tough, and remain in partner even if you don't get what you want. Because at any one of those stages, magic can happen.
Wow. I mean, I would have never imagined that that thought is behind into the personal relationship. I can definitely tell you that it's happened. I've personally been both in the predator and also in the prey scenario, and it definitely comes with a lot of responsibility when you're dealing with people, and that's where this can make or break, I think, in the life of others, and especially if you're, regardless if it's at home or it's at work, whatever is expressed verbally, it makes a big difference, right? It's how we use our language and how we use our communication.
And you've just got to a very important point I want to mention. Regardless of home or work, there is something about the human condition that many of us misbehave more at home than we do at work. Isn't that odd that somehow we can control ourselves with a really difficult client or boss, and yet we go home and we find ourselves exploding at our partner or our kids or the dog? And my belief is that it's a lot harder or a lot easier for them to get rid of us in the work environment than in the home environment. So the cool thing is I work with people across the continuum, whether it's professional or personal. For me, if I'm working in a professional environment with someone and we talk about how to deal with their teenager, that's going to pay off professionally for them because they're the same human being.
So what challenges lie in front of a person who doesn't know all the tricks behind that? I mean, I say tricks, do forgive me, I don't mean that there's any tricks.
We call them magic tricks.
Yeah, magic tricks. There are people who are ready to change themselves, right? And then they get to speak to you. But what are the challenges that you see them face, that they will be facing in order to change their way of communication, interpersonal communication?
Well, you've just nailed one of the biggest ones, is the awareness.
Okay.
I have so many people, they'll come in and I'll meet them, or maybe I meet them socially or in a networking event, and I'm speaking with them and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I got me a predator here.
Wow.
And then I've explained the model. And so I used to say, so do you think you're more predator or more prey? Knowing that they would say, oh yeah, more predator. And they say, oh, I am so prey.
Wow.
And I have stopped falling off my chair. It's happened so many times. I'm like, oh my gosh. And myself included, we are so lacking in awareness of how other people perceive us. And you know what? One of the benefits of so much virtual communication is now we've got to see, we're looking right at ourselves. Absolutely. And one of the simplest things I work on with people is smiling, because they're like, so Sue, are you in a good mood? Yeah, I'm in a good mood. Peter, are you happy? Yeah, I'm happy. And I'm like, okay, we got to work on something here. And this is a little bit sensitive for women, because I don't know if you're familiar with this. I think this is sort of a global phenomenon that men have a tendency, male strangers will often say to females, walking down the street or in an exchange, oh, smile. And they mean it innocently. I do believe that, except for women, we're like, don't tell me to smile. We're so sick of it.
I've heard that before, yeah.
Right, okay. And yet, the reason why a smile, and I'm not talking about one of these smiles,
Of course.
not the flirty smile. In fact, the simple way to adjust a flirty smile to an appropriate smile is no teeth. So watch the difference. Right? And maybe less shoulder there. So
wow,
the smile, the reason it's so critical is because I'm literally saying to the other person, today you're safe. Today you won't die. Can't promise tomorrow.
Wow.
Because we're still operating from that fight or flight brain when we're even under just a little bit of stress.
So from interpersonal communication, it seems like there's we learned that body language does a lot of talk, right? So there are experts in body language and how you should carry yourself, how you should talk, how you should look at the person you're talking to. What if a person cannot change the way they represent themselves or they present themselves, but they have a power of talking? Yeah, they can change the world by the way they talk and by the way they communicate. Will those two kind of work against each other? Do you see that?
I don't see them as separate. I don't see how it's possible. If like in their written word, they're really inspiring, though if they can't deliver it with the packaging, because all of my work, I didn't tell you this yet, is based, and you're probably starting to guess that, on body language, voice, words. And then the final piece is the mindset. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? So much of that is body language, voice, words, that if there's a mismatch and I'm not able to represent it through the way I'm standing or looking at the people or gesturing or my volume or intonation, then the message either gets lost. The people will either not believe the message or they'll be confused. And you may get dismissed. So here's an example with the voice. This is one of the key tools that I teach people. Many people, women perhaps more than men, though many, many nice men have this habit of using something called the upward inflection. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate it now. My name is Amy Caroll. I'm a coach and a trainer. I live in Switzerland. And you're thinking, I don't know, do you? Because everything ends with it sounds like a question. Yeah. Now I'm doing that either because I've been socialized to be a nice person. This is the way I should present myself. And unconsciously, I'm wanting to let you know I'm not a threat. You're safe with me. Except doing too much of this, and by too much, I mean more than 20% is too much. Then that can sabotage your credibility.
And tell me about it. I mean, speaking for myself, many of my years were spent in corporate and with many leaders. And sometimes you would just ask yourself, he or she is not coming across. The message is not clear, or the message is too clear, or message is just clear. But I believe that knowing what's behind the success formula, not only this, what lies behind the true and perfect communication, interpersonal communication, can really make or break not only an organization, a relationship, partnerships. So let me say, I'm going to tell you a phrase, and then I'm going to ask you, what does it mean to you? And it says, I read this somewhere. It says, pretend not to notice when the other person is being a jerk.
Where does that come from?
Where does it come? Oh. It perhaps comes from I don't know. You tell us. I think it's somewhere in the screen. We can see that.
Yes, yeah. A little product placement here. So,
okay.
My book,
The Ego Tango.
The Ego Tango. Yes, I've got some pages out here. And this is the book that I wrote. So my sister Pat creates this model of predator-prey partner. We've got the body language, voice, words. And I come along, and in 2007, I start writing down the stories from my workshops that I've been telling, only because this good friend of mine said, Amy, you got to collect these stories. These are fantastic. I said, okay, Rebecca, I'll do that. I'm not a big fan of writing. So she squeezed these stories out of me. So I got the stories written down. And then she said, Amy, you have a book here. I said, no, I don't. She said, yeah, you do. I said, no, I don't. I said, yeah, you know, so we're going back and forth. Because it's funny, I think if you've never written a book, the brain doesn't think, we don't see ourselves in a certain light. So I never saw myself as someone who was a writer. And so that's how the book came about. And so it's a collection of the 7 partner mindset techniques that either help you to stay in partner or pull you out of partner. And then one of them, the one you mentioned, is pretend not to notice when the other person's being a jerk. So this is probably the most challenging skill I teach people. And I finally made a video about it so people can find it on my website where I demonstrate it. I have someone come in and I have them yell at me and then I show how I respond. So, and it's something you have to train the body to do, because otherwise when we get verbally attacked by someone, many of us go into freeze mode.
Yep.
Or we'll either go into fight or flight, or, you know, fight or
correct,
freeze or flight. And as the result, our brain has stopped working. So you've got to override that by creating new muscle memory to how to respond. So I show people on the video how to handle that.
Well, we're gonna kind of advise where we can go and see that at the end of the podcast. But, you know,
sure,
feel free to also share that now if you want to. I think it's a beautiful video to see.
Let me say one more thing, because people are like, well, I still don't get it. How? So if you were, actually, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Would you do me a favor? And they'll probably think we've rehearsed this. Would you do me a favor and be like, let's say you're my client or my boss or something, and I've screwed up.
Okay.
You're going to verbally attack me on this video session right now. It can just be like one sentence. Amy, are you kidding me?
Okay.
This is unprofessional. Okay. Just go and be as aggressive as you can be and hold it until you're no longer motivated to hold it. And then we can debrief it. Okay.
Sure. Well, first of all,
and really don't hold back.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know, just bear with me. I've never done this before, but then I'll try to do it as best of my knowledge.
So you're surprising me. We're having a conversation, and all of a sudden, out of the blue.
Amy, I'm really upset with the results. This is absolutely unacceptable what you guys have done. It is totally not what I expected. And forget it. I mean, I'm not paying for this. Okay.
Got it. So
and we even might just cancel this partnership altogether. It's bad.
Yeah, you are really dissatisfied. We screwed up.
Big time.
Yeah, big time. Got that.
Big time. You know, it's like.
Okay, good. All right. So good. So did you? And I have to tell you that your level of angry was mild compared to what I've experienced. I know people are like, they can never do it, you know, as aggressive. I have to like coach people to be really aggressive. So that was still not viable. What's the word I want? That was still a valid example of someone being upset in the professional world. How did you notice yourself feeling when I was responding to you?
Well, somehow you were not like, you know,
I wasn't prey.
Yeah. And somehow, you know, you acknowledged, but it was a tough acknowledgement.
Tough in the sense? In
sense of that, you acknowledged that something was wrong and you accepted it. But I didn't find you on the ground, if I may say.
Right, and that's what so here's what's happening. In your brain, you were expecting one of two responses.
Yeah.
Probably because as a professional, you were less likely expecting a predator response. What I'm hearing you're saying is you were kind of expecting a prey response.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I really legitimately did something wrong. And it's really easy for me to want to go prey in that moment.
Absolutely.
You're feeling horrible.
I was expecting that.
That's why you this person has to train this over and over and over. So what I did was, as soon as I heard, you know, I was kind of like sitting like this.
Yeah.
And as soon as I heard the aggression, the anger, I readjusted slowly.
Correct.
I put my hand out. I call this the peace offering.
Oh yeah, I saw your hand going first. You know, I was like, wow, it's like even.
And then I did mostly active listening. Yeah. Right. And then I went to summarize, and you started speaking again, I think. So I stopped myself. So you weren't ready to listen to me. So my job is to shut up and listen to you. And then I used some of your words, or, you know, I screwed up. I don't know if you had said that. That's the words I put on it.
Unfortunately, I said that, yeah.
Good. So it's, you know, person wants to hear their words. Yeah. They don't want me to, so I kind of messed up. You don't want me to play it down, because if I did that, then you'd be like, and you were still agitated. So I stayed with you. And in the real world, I would have done it another, probably you would have only needed another 10 or 15 seconds of that. And then you would have calmed down. And believe it or not, because my job is to rescue the relationship here.
Okay. Yeah.
And it looks like this is a done deal. It looks like the relationship is over. Maybe. And maybe it's over for this exchange, except my job is to leave as little damage as possible to the relationship. And often when this is done well, the other person's going to respond one of three ways. Either you're going to thank me, you might apologize, or you might go out of your way to help me in the future. And my job, and when I'm not, and even if you had been like wildly inappropriate, insulting, rude, even then in that moment, I would not address it right then and there, because my job is to help you to save face in the moment. Though after the fact, if I felt like you were out of line in any way, I would wait 1, 2, 3 days. I'd think about it. I'd calm down. I'd rehearse what I wanted to say. Maybe I'd send it in an email. Maybe I'd put it in a letter. Maybe I'd call you. Maybe I'd ask to go have coffee with you. And then I would address your behavior once we got through this storm. Though right in the moment is not the moment for me to address any behavior that might have been inappropriate.
It's amazing how you put it, because most of the conflicts, and I'm not talking about personal, not personal life, but professional, but equally personal, and maybe more personal, because, you know, we accept and we allow things to happen, as you mentioned earlier. Most of it happens, and, you know, it escalates when the other person doesn't know when to when to let it go. And once you want to reply, how should you reply? If you're a mistake, if you're wrong, and even if you're not wrong, sometimes the other side that actually, you know, I could be equally wrong as an owner of a company because I wasn't clear what I wanted, and somebody else messed up.
All right, let me address the second point first. Yeah. Because people ask me when I do this demo in my classes, they say, well, Amy, what if it wasn't your fault? Believe it or not, I wouldn't respond very differently. I would do the same thing. Yeah. Right. Okay. So Sunil, clearly we have a problem. Yes. You're not happy with how it turned out. I might not say I screwed up if I know it wasn't me, though I'm not going to explain to you right then and there, well, Sunil, man, I was on vacation. It wasn't me. Yeah. I would stay with you, stay with your pain. And, you know, my job is to de-escalate you. And then after the fact, either you're going to figure it out that it wasn't me, or once you're calm, cool, and collected, I might come to you and let you know. Though most likely, somehow most people are they end up finding out, oh my God, I accused Amy, it wasn't even her. Okay. And if you haven't said anything to me, then I would come to you and say, hey, Sunil, can we talk about our chat last week? I have some time now. I wanted to let you know that I can appreciate that you were really upset and disappointed with the outcome. I would have been too. And I wanted you to know that I actually wasn't on that project, or, you know, I was actually on holiday and wasn't aware of what happened. And I'm glad that we were able to resolve it for you, or, you know, I'm sorry once again that worked out the way it did. I will certainly make sure I do the best of my ability that it doesn't happen again. So I'm going to straighten out the score if I need to, though I'm going to give you some time to see if you can figure it out on your own.
Okay. So let's move away from this for a moment and say, okay, so usually who comes to you? I mean, who reaches out to you and asks for advice, for consultancy? Who are the main once you obviously cover that, what are the major challenges those people face?
So I have a lot of loyal clients. I've been here in Switzerland for 25 years now. I've had my business for 20 years, and I work in many different industries. I don't have one specific industry I focus on because this is all about, if you're dealing with another human being, then these skills are going to be valuable, whether it's virtual or face-to-face. And I work a lot with senior leaders. So I sometimes have HR come to me and say, can you help us with the senior leader? Because they're pissing everyone off. So sometimes I've got people who are unrecovered predators who either don't know they're a predator, which then they're kind of an easy case, because once they realize it, usually that's not their intention. Oh my gosh, what do I need to do to change?
Correct.
Second category of predators are the ones who know that they're predator, except they think the only other option, a way to get things done, is by being overly nice, being prey. And once they realize there's this sweet spot of partner where they can maintain the relationship and still get the results, and maybe even more so, then they're like, okay, keep talking, I'm interested. There are some people, a very minor category of people who are predators for the sheer joy of it.
Okay. Wow.
Yes, I've known a few in my life. Now, even some of those can be influenced to change their behavior, though there are a few that literally, I think I've only come across one in my life professionally. Okay. Personally, I've probably come across a few more. So that there literally might be a sociopath or some kind of impairment in the brain that doesn't allow them to have empathy or care or concern for other human beings. So those types are never going to change, though that's a very microscopic number of people.
Okay.
So often senior leaders, and then what they find out is, oh my gosh, this can help my teams. So sometimes I get to work with the highest echelon, and then we start moving down and work with different teams. And what's interesting, so I'm going to quiz you.
Okay.
Do you think, he's like, wait, I'm interviewing you. Do you think in the world at large that under pressure, more people go predator or more people go prey?
I would probably say predator.
That's what we think.
Right.
Because, and it's not true.
Yeah. Okay.
When I'm working with groups of people, Sahil, what I see is group after group after group. There's, even in countries that come across as very dominant and aggressive, there are more people who showing up as prey under pressure than predator. And here's my belief. I think it's because a predator can only get away with being predator if they have the positional power or the money or something they can blackmail us with.
Okay.
Because they can't sustain it if they don't have the positional power.
Okay.
The thing is, they make so many of because they have the positional power, they are capable of making so many of our lives miserable that we think that there are predators everywhere.
Which is not the case.
Which, what I see is that people tend to go more prey. And like you said earlier, is that some of us can flip-flop. We might be prey with our boss and predator at home, for example.
So one thing I've seen in this period, and I don't talk about pandemic in the podcast. We keep it always relative to everything which is going on daily basis on business as usual, life as usual. But one thing I've realized is that in this period where people, and especially organizations, have had a need for strong communicators and leaders that had to come out and give a message. They've been struck by the technology, and they've been kind of, the message, kind of 50% of the messages just vanish because of the fact of digital or virtual, or there's no, that human touch, as they call it. Now, this is something we have to get used to, because more and more of our business is being run in this way over a screen.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's just because a lot of people were not prepared, or do you think that people have to understand how to communicate with technology better to be understood. I know some people have not even had their screens on when they've been giving strong messages to their associates in the past months of certain redundancies and certain restructurings.
Oh my gosh.
Some people haven't even had the screens on. So how do you tackle that if you have a customer or client or someone comes and says, what do I do? I mean, how do I communicate?
I literally gave an 7-hour class, an all-day class on your virtual presence. A client called me up a couple of months ago and said, Amy, we need this. I said, okay, I will organize it. And first of all, I was shocked how much we were able to cover in 7 hours and how engaging it stayed for them. So that I think that a lot of them were worried, and myself included. Well, I was less worried because I had gone through another similar. And there's many ways to engage the people so that they feel part of it and stimulated and accountable. And one of them is keeping the cameras on when it's appropriate. Sometimes a larger group, no. 2, believe it or not, especially like when I do a training, I had 12 people in that class. I had them all stay off mute. I said, unless there's a 4-legged or a 2-legged furry, creature that is making a lot of noise, keep yourself off mute. Because mentally that keeps us more engaged. Another thing, off mute.
I love that.
Yeah. So simple, and it really makes people more accountable. Another thing is like I've rearranged my office so that my camera is facing where I've got the light on me. Your setting is fantastic. You've got a beautiful background. You are angled perfectly for the design of your room and the ceiling. You have great light there. Everything looks clean and polished. And one thing that you did well that I would have done differently today if I was thinking about it is just to, let me do this, raise this computer just a bit, because ideally we want the camera slightly above. Okay. Yeah, so yours is at a good angle. Mine, I would have adjusted if I was thinking. And so all those little things. How does the background look? One time I was doing a video and I had like my suitcase from some little trip I was on. I'm like, Amy. So there's all these little things to think about that give that professional, polished look without perfection. So one of the things I work with a lot of perfectionists, and I say, so I'm going to help you to enhance your presence virtually and face to face. And I'm also going to help you recover from mistakes, because it's not about being perfect.
Correct.
And then they're a little bit nervous, like, I kind of like being perfect because that makes me feel safer. Yeah. And it's draining to the body. And also you're missing the opportunity to build your trust with the audience, because if you look too perfect and too polished, they're not going to necessarily trust it. So one other thing I'd add is that's the thing about virtual backgrounds.
Correct.
Sometimes it's great because they give this nice polished look. And then sometimes it's like, what is she hiding?
Correct.
Does she have her laundry behind that? What's going on?
Yeah.
So my feeling, and I'm also encouraging people, because I've got so many of my clients that I had one guy whose 12-year-old son walked in and served him an espresso. Here, Daddy. I was like, that's friggin' brilliant. Yeah. So I want people to be able to manage when they have family members interrupting them, children, other things going on, because that's the reality. And that's what people in a way want to see. They want to see that you're a real human being.
I'm grateful that you've mentioned all this, because you see, I think even the interpersonal communication has changed with this couple of months, and perhaps it's just opened up opportunities. But the whole, the science behind interpersonal communication hasn't changed. It's still human beings talking to each other, and how we react to each other's verbal and body language coming across the screen. But one thing that is also on my mind that I want to kind of ask you, what would you advise is, what do we expect now? I mean, moving forward, right? A lot of organizations, a lot of people are wondering, if they're ever going to go back to that much of interpersonal connection, right? Or is it going to be remaining 50%, 60% of our business on the screen? And what you gave as an advice, to, be tidy, but don't be like in a laboratory with everything white. Do you see that now becoming something that everyone has to just be good at? Because if you're going to be on screen, then you need to, it's just like walking and, driving to your office.
I think so. I really think so. And that's why I want people to be able to show up authentically.
Okay.
Let's call it this way, their best version of themselves authentically.
Yeah.
And so that's why the background and the lighting and the equipment, and like you'll probably notice I was using lots of gestures. Well, I'm making sure that I'm not gesturing out here. I'm not doing floppy gestures, right?
Yeah.
And because I got to have my camera on looking at me to make sure that I'm doing that correctly. Because gestures, as you build your gesture library, there's 3 videos on my website. They can check that out. That's another way that you show up as having a clear message and concise speech, and you sound confident and competent.
Interesting. I'm going to go away from this now, and within the frame, obviously. Can you name 3 people who have been the most inspirational in your life? Who are those 3?
Yeah, well, my sister Pat, who I mentioned.
Okay.
She's brought this work to the world, and I'm forever grateful. Let's see. The other 2 people would have to be my parents. They're just, my mother was a teacher. My father worked in nonprofit, and he was a director of an networking organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. So he exposed all of us to the world, because he literally traveled around the world, meeting amazing human beings and bringing Japanese dolls back and African dolls back. And my mother, when I was 8 years old, she took a job as an inner city school teacher in the Bronx, in a very tough neighborhood. And I was growing up in a white suburb and had all the privilege of being white that went with that. And so she would bring me to school with her, and the joy that gave me to be able to see different cultures and meet these kids. And so, they've both been very inspirational as well.
Wow. It's interesting when I ask this question, and so far I think everyone has mentioned family most dominantly. A lot of people with your success also thank the families behind them that have been such a great inspiration. And I think that's a great place to always look for inspiration. We don't have to go out and look for it on a billboard or in a movie, or I think that's where inspiration starts, in the family. Yeah. So this was a tough one, because I always like to know what's the biggest failure you've been through, and so what would you remember as the biggest, biggest failure in your life so far, and what did you learn from it? And I say failure in a way that I just want to emphasize it. That it's great to fail, but
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember someone saying, often our failures are things that we regret that we didn't do. And that's true for me. It's going to seem so superficial, and yet it was such a big one for years. In 9th grade, I had the chance to either to join the gymnastics team or take a part-time job. And I took the part-time job. Now, all the wonderful things that brought me, it was fantastic. Though I remember the gymnastics teacher saying, "No, sorry, Amy, you have to be here full time." And so I gave up on that. And that was always something that I regretted, wishing I had been able to do that as well. Because I felt like the importance of physical agility and fitness and health are such an important part of my life now that I wished I had started at an earlier age than I did.
Okay, that's hey. I mean, failures can be different, but I think my question would be now: did they pay you well in the part-time job?
Yes, she was. It was a wonderful job working at a fabric store, and yes,
Okay,
it set me straight.
awesome. That, see, and again, that's important because if you've learned that by failing and not taking the gymnastic classes, you actually make money. That's fine.
Yeah.
Somewhere in your book, you mentioned there's a statement saying dot 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 and then say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah. Oh, you've just touched on one of my favorite things in the whole world, which is improvisational theater. Do you know what that is?
yes.
It makes me so happy. And I get to be, I'm in 2 improv troupes, one in French,
Really?
which is interesting because my French is
Okay.
questionable, and one with a group of English speaking scientists who are millennials and me.
Fantastic.
Oh, it gives me so much joy. And so say yes is one of the guiding principles of improvisational theater.
Okay.
So if I go on stage and I'm performing with somebody and they say, "Oh, grandma, is your hip hurting?" And I go, "I don't know who you are." Well, that could be a block. That could be me saying no. Now, if my improviser is skilled, he would turn to the other improviser and say, "Oh, her Alzheimer's kicking in again." So he would, what he's just done was he's taken my offer to say, "I don't know you," and he's flipped it around and justified it. And he accepted my offer of pretending not to know him. So even though I blocked him, he overrode it and accepted my offer. And so then the scene can advance. And it's the same thing in life. Many of us, our muscles of saying no are overdeveloped. So it's really about paying attention. And like in the book, I talk about an old man on the train saying something to me in German. And I'm like, "Oh man, what did I do wrong?" And I blocked him by saying, "Oh, no, sprechen Sie Deutsch, don't speak German." And he hears my accent. He changes into English because the Swiss are so gifted with languages.
Yes, they are.
And he says, "Can I help you with your suitcase?"
Wow.
So this guy was not telling me I'd run over somebody's dog. He was wanting to help me with my suitcase.
Yeah.
And I was just about to say, "Oh, no, thank you. It's not heavy." And then I realized, oh my God, I'm going to block him again. And I stopped myself. I said, "Oh yes, that would be lovely. Thank you." And he gets off the train. It's not even his stop. He gets out of his seat. He gets off the train. He takes my suitcase. He puts it on the ground. And then he extends his hand, and I stepped off the train. And it was like a scene out of a romantic movie. It was the sweetest thing in the world. And it left me high for hours. And luckily, I was just thrilled because I remembered to accept the offer.
And it's just as simple as that, right? I mean, you could have just said, you can't speak. I mean, sorry, I don't know what you're saying, and just continued. And we see that a lot in our lives, that by not being not only curious, but by just not accepting, right?
Yeah.
And just to something that you maybe are very foreign to, or you don't understand, or you don't want to kind of accept.
Yeah.
You might lose an opportunity, and you might just lose an opportunity of connecting with another.
So true.
Right.
Like when I had the chance to meet you, I hadn't even seen, you in action yet. And I was like, absolutely, say yes, Amy. In fact, so my friends get worried. The times when I say no, they're like, "What's wrong? Something's wrong," because they're so accustomed to me saying yes to things.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's what I think change happens, right? That when we accept things and not just bluntly saying no because we're not really, first of all, sometimes we say no because we're not sure of what's waiting.
Right.
But that itself blocks a lot of opportunities and also possibilities. So I'm happy you said yes. And
Me too.
I'm sure we're going to have more of this in the future to come. Now, there's a lot people can do to better or to kind of polish their skills in interpersonal relationship. But if you would categorize, right? If somebody says, but what should I fix first? I can talk, I can walk, I have a good body language. But what is the first thing I should think of when I open my mouth? Just as simple as that, And sometimes we open and say things without putting a lot of thought behind it because we want to be impulsive. We're impulsive.
Right.
Some people are not, some people are. But regardless if you are or you're not, what is the first thing that person has to think before they even?
Yeah. So the question is, what is the first thing people should think about before they say anything else?
Correct.
Yeah. I would say, just check with the person you heard what they said. Just like I did there, just align with them. So I call it active listening. Everyone knows it, right? Just making sure you've heard the person. And that's great, especially if if there's any kind of conflict or resistance. If we're in disagreement, by slowing down the process, I'm slowing down the whole process. I'm slowing down my thinking. I'm physiologically calming myself down by not jumping and reacting and responding too quickly. And there's this great quote, I think maybe my sister said it. She said, "It's hard to fight in slow motion." So just by me taking a moment to reflect what you've said, then I'm I'm checking to make sure I understood you. Two, maybe you're checking, no, that's not what I meant. You can correct yourself. And three, if you're upset with me, it feels very, it's like a form of empathy when you hear your words fed back to you. So I would say slowing down any exchange, especially if it's delicate or difficult, is going to be one of the best things you can do.
I think that's beautifully said. I think sometimes we don't really listen to what's been said, and we just have to counter communicate just for the sake of having a saying or a point. So thanks for that insight. And we're reaching slightly the first end of the first podcast. I'm sure there's going to be many more with you, and it's very difficult to fit everything in one podcast with you. I'm sure all of interpersonal communication is so vast and so important. Nothing can substitute communication and interpersonal communication. But if I would ask you to be in my shoes today, pretend you're me, and is there a question that you would like to ask yourself that I didn't?
We talked about respect. We talked about, I would ask, gee, Amy, if there was one word you were to remove from your vocabulary, what would it be?
Okay, so if there's one word you would like to remove from your vocabulary, what would it be?
Wow, gosh, you practically read my mind. I would say the word but, B-U-T.
Okay.
It just creates conflict unintentionally.
Without even, going further.
And newsletter number 4, I explain all the options people have for replacing but with what they can replace it with. So it won't be tragic when they no longer have that word in their vocabulary.
I agree with you. I've not taken it out fully, but I can say that yes, just by saying it, by thinking it, it's already negative.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, Amy, it's been an amazing opportunity, and it's been a privilege to have you on the podcast today.
Same here.
We're gonna connect with you again if you permit us and you have time for us.
Absolutely.
But I just said, but.
Good catch! Oh my God, that was so fast! Congratulations!
And I'm not going to say however, because it's going to replace but.
That's but's first cousin.
Yeah, right.
How about and?
And. They're relatives. And. Listeners, viewers would like to connect further with you. Where do they go? Where can they find you?
So all my social media channels are Amy Caroll Coaching. And that's Caroll with 2 R's and 2 L's. And my website is carolcoaching.com. And that's on the website where if they go to resources, they can get all the videos and podcasts and newsletters.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. I look forward to connecting with you again very soon. This is Coach Pedari in partnership with ivycoaches from Dubai. We've connected with a lovely communication coach, Amy Caroll from the Caroll Communication Coaching in Switzerland. Have a fantastic afternoon and evening, wherever you are, guys, or morning. And Amy, I'll leave the last words to you.
What do I like to tell people? Be the best partner you can be. Easy as that.
And with that, we wish everyone a fantastic, fantastic rest of the week. Thank you so much, and see you soon again.
Bye, everyone.